Hi.
I am sitting here with the one and only Jackie Chan, global superstar, and he is signing all of these books. Are your hands tired?
No, tired, but I'm happy.
All right.
Yeah,
I'm
really,
so
really
happy to hear that.
How do you feel?
Good. I'm excited. This is the first time I've done something like this before, a live signing.
Where do I want to go that I've never been? Oh, we're thinking about, not thinking, we're putting it in motion. I'm going to go to Indonesia on my Irresponsible tour this year. I'm excited about that. I've never been. And there's been a heavy demand for me there. So we're going to go. We're going to go to Indonesia and I'm going to make people laugh in Indonesia. That's how I roll. How do you roll? I can't make this up. Wayne, you got your Indonesia pants? I decided it about a good 3 weeks ago. You'll see it on the schedule soon, so I suggest you go get your pants for Indonesia. Because you're not going to wear them stupid pants. Where do you think Indonesia is? India. Yes, we out.
So you can see that I'm signing it. This is not some machine scribbling my name. This is my actual human body scribbling my name. So, all right, there we go. First book, signed.
We have fans from all over who have written questions that they want to ask you.
Oh dear.
And they're also going to get signed copies of the book. We're so excited.
Yeah.
So you ready to jump into
Yes,
some questions?
yes.
Hey, we're live at the live signing.
To my mind, the successful feeling at the end of a book is not that you have done everything you could with the book, but that you scratched the surface.
So it was a wonderful, it was a wonderful experience and a wonderful discipline in storytelling.
I'm going to start signing right now. I guess I'll sign in red. You know, red. I'm a Delta. Red.
Can you guys see that? See, he's a little smudge right there. So if you see a little smudge, that means Charles jumped on the book as I was signing it.
I don't mind doing signings because people really love a signed copy of a book. I know I do. I will sometimes sign a book to myself.
You were only 7 weeks old and ABC really wanted to get the new host in that seat and get things going. And I said, but I'm breastfeeding. And by the way, that was at a point like in 1979, coming up on 1980, you really weren't even allowed to say breastfeeding on the air.
I feel like this is something we kind of all need right now.
My life changed after my leg was broken in 1985. My world changed. I had the world by the tail. I had every material thing you could possibly hope for going for you in your life. And then all of a sudden, bang, in one instance, it was gone.
The only thing that matters is the love you give and the love you allow yourself to receive.
I'm healthier than I've ever been, only because I got healthy when I was like 40. Thank you so much.
Got it. Hi there. You probably recognize this guy. I'm Ned Rust. I'm his publisher, the James Patterson here, the #1 best-selling author in the world. And
Did you just make that up?
I did some research before I got here today.
We are doing my virtual live book signing.
Live book signing.
This is crazy.
More and more authors are doing this. I think it's so cool.
Signing some of the signed copies that you guys can get at premiercollectibles.com.
You're going to be signing these books
Yes,
live
I
over the
will
next
be.
45 minutes.
Hey, what up, this is I'm watching myself. Look at that. I need to stop.
If you're OCD, how is this panic-inducing to you?
They're not
like
watching
all
anymore.
these.
They've got a bag.
Yeah.
They've got a bag.
I'm inspired by your success. What advice do you give someone who's never found his passion?
Hi, I'm Judge Janine Pirro. You probably heard of my book, Liars, Liberals, and Leakers. I may look like Greg Gutfeld, but I'm not. Actually, this is so exciting. My 8th book, The Gutfeld Monologues, is out. This is fantastic. If you haven't purchased it yet, you're dead to me. But you still have time to reanimate and become my best friend.
Biggest pet peeve? Men that talk to me with spinach in their teeth.
What can I do while at work to help lower my stress and improve my health?
One musician do you most admire?
I love you all, and we'll talk again soon. Take care.
Bye.
Much love. See ya.
See you soon, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
We'll see you around the world. Woo!
Have a great day.
Thank you, everyone here.
Bye, guys.
Say goodbye, Mary.
See you in the morning.
Goodbye, everybody. Thanks for coming.
Welcome, everybody. Thank you to our conversation with Brian Wheat today of Tesla. My name is Chris Epting. I'm an author and a music journalist, and I had the distinct pleasure of co-writing Mr. Wheat's memoir with him. Brian, how you doing today?
My man, Chris. What's up?
You're in Sacramento at your studio. We're going to get into this in a little bit, but the studio where you're sitting, there's Tesla history in that room, right? What's taking place right where you are?
We recorded Shock here. We recorded what was that? What's that other album before Shock? No, not Forevermore. That was at the old studio. Simplicity. Yeah. So yeah, I built this in 2013 after I had a fire in my old studio, and Tesla did Forevermore and Into the Now there at the old studio.
And Phil Collins was there working with you guys where you are there on J Street today. And
yeah.
And Brian, we should show people too. Obviously, we want to thank everybody for supporting the new book, Son of a
There it
Milkman.
is.
Brian, when you and I first got together a year or two ago to work on this, the first thing you said to me was, look, we're going to do this book, but this is what I'm calling it. It's Son of a Milkman. I don't care what anybody says. That's the title. And
Yeah, I was pretty adamant about that.
You were very adamant about it, but it's kind of, Son of a Milkman, for those that don't know the phrase, refers to sort of like back in the day when there were guys that delivered milk and things that would happen occasionally with the milkman and a woman alone at home. And you actually are the son of a milkman. I mean, this isn't just a turn of phrase. This
No.
is
I mean, for the record, I am the illegitimate son of the milkman. And some people would like be kind of bummed out about that or embarrassed, and I wear like a badge of honor.
Well, listen, that's what struck me about it, because you wear everything like a badge of honor. And there are a lot of great stories in this book. And by the way, we have a ton of questions. We're going to get to all of them. So if you're online, if you've got the book and asked a question, we're going to get to it. But the first thing that struck me when you and I first started talking was the fact that you weren't going to hold back. You were going to include your life as a musician, but also a lot of other things that happen in your life that a lot of people don't talk about. We talk a lot about depression. You talk about anxiety. You talk about these other things that you deal with on a day-to-day basis. And I think that's what makes the book so interesting is you get all the rock and roll and sex and drugs and all that, but you also get this person who's very human in you. And what was it like for you? Like, what made you decide to sort of come clean with all this stuff and bare your soul like that? Because you don't normally get that in these kinds of books.
Well, I think it came a point where I just turned 58, so I'm getting older. And when I decided that I actually was going to write a book about my life, I wanted it to be about my whole life, not just my life in Tesla, because I always thought the fact that, I was the milkman's son and, I grew up on the wrong side of the tracks, if you will. All those things, they gave me this drive that I have, right? They made me driven to try to become this guy that I am today, I guess, to say I wanted to be a rock star, it's so cliched, but that's what Paul McCartney was. And so I wanted to do what he did, because when I heard that voice at a young age, it inspired me. And I went, whatever that is, that's cool. Right, when I heard Eleanor Rigby. So I just figured that if you're going to put the time and effort into writing a book and telling your story, tell it. What the fuck? People want to judge me. I don't care. You know what I mean? It's like, I'm just like you. You know what I mean? I talk about anxiety, depression. I talk about my autoimmune disease where I shit blood because my intestines are all ratted out, because my immune system attacks it. So I talk about how I, in order to stay thin in the 90s, I would stick my finger down my throat. These are all things that normal people deal with.
Yeah.
So
it makes it relatable. I agree. Some things
I just wanted to say, look, I'm just like you. Except my job is I play bass and sing signs, and love will find a way with Tesla. That's my job. And other than that, I'm just like you. I get sad. I get my feelings hurt when people call me a fat bastard on the internet. You know, all those things, you know, I'm human. That's really what I'm trying to say.
Brian, you mentioned about Paul McCartney and what an inspiration he's been for you. And one of my favorite stories in the book, and there's a great photo as well, is you met him back in the 1980s when Tesla first went to London. If you can give fans sort of a brief take on that story, because I think it's one of the high points of the book and something that I know stuck with you.
Well, the band was in England playing the Marquee. It was right after the record came out. And we did like 5 shows in Europe, promotional shows. And this was before we went on tour with Def Leppard. And I think it was right after we had done the David Lee Roth tour. Mm-hmm. And so there was, you know, there's a good buzz on the record, and England was really into it. So me and Frank were over at Geffen Records in Soho doing interviews. And we finished, and he said, hey, let's go look, you know, I want to go look at these guitars, which were on Tottenham Court Road. Well, that's right around the corner from where Paul McCartney's office was.
And you knew that?
Well, I didn't know it. I do now, but at the time, I knew that McCartney had an office called MPL. So I'm walking through this little square, which is Soho Square, and I look, and there's this building, and it says MPL. Holy shit, Frank, that's his building. And I look up, me and Frank look up on the 3rd floor, and he's sitting on the 3rd floor looking out the window. And, you know, it's like, hey, man, you know. And he's like, you know, okay, you know, hang on, bro. And I said, Frank, he's going to come down. I'm going to meet him. And Frank said, hey, man, I'm going to look for guitars. And he took off. And Paul came down, and I met him, and I talked to him for about 5 minutes and told him, you know, I was in a new young band that was playing the Marquee, and he wished me luck and said a lot of people get their start there. And he was a gentleman. It was great.
It's amazing. You had a little camera, a little Instamatic camera on you, and you had another person on the street take your photo. I know hanging out in your studio up there, it hangs on the wall. And of course, it's also in the book. Fans can see right there.
Yeah, that's it.
Young Brian Wheat with Paul McCartney. A lot of other great photos in the book as well. Hey, Brian, let's take a couple of questions. Again, your fans have been amazing. They've been waiting for this. And Let's see. We have Mark down in Texas wants to know, will Tesla release any sort of box set of unreleased music or a special box set in the near future?
That's kind of a tricky question. The answer is there's tons of it. And I've been trying, you know, we've been trying to put out a box set for several years. But there's a question as to who has the ownership of it, whether it's us or Universal. So we came close to trying to put something out for the 25th anniversary, which was going to be a box set. And it kind of stalled. So, you know, now when this COVID thing goes over, whatever, we'll maybe go back to them and try to come up with a deal that's good for both parties, you know, the band and Jimmy, I'm getting a call from the wife. Tell her I'm doing a live interview, please. That, you know, works for both parties involved. But yeah, there's tons of stuff.
Excellent.
There's a whole box set. Yeah. And I it's one of my personal missions. I want it to come out one day.
Fantastic. Tim Hughes in Bolingbrook, Illinois has a question. Now, this goes to a deep thread in the book. You detail certain relationships and friendships in the book, one of whom is with Jimmy Page of Led Zeppelin. And we'll get to that in a bit, but Tim wants to know, describe being on stage and playing with Jimmy Page. Was that your most cherished moment as a player? If not, what was?
Yeah, that was.
That was it.
That was, you know, Jimmy's a really good friend of mine, and I'm pretty private and precious about our friendship because I don't drive him crazy and act like a fanboy to me and Monique. And, you know, he's just Jimmy. He's my buddy. And I spent a lot of time with him, you know, going record shopping or going to coffee shops or eating dinners or, you know, whatever. And that one moment when I went up to Seattle, you know, he didn't know I was coming to.
Well, describe what was going on. There was a charity or an event.
Paul Allen was doing a thing. Paul Allen from Microsoft was doing a thing to celebrate Jimmy Page's career. And I was, you know, invited and asked if I would perform with Paul Rogers and do the Firm songs, Radioactive and Satisfaction Guaranteed. So I said, absolutely. So I went up there and I played, and Jimmy didn't know I was coming. And, you know, I was played last, me and Paul Rogers. And when they said, you know, and now from the band Tesla, Brian Weed and Paul Rogers, and Jimmy sitting in the first row, and he's like, whoa. So I'm like, hey, buddy. So that in itself was a big honor, right? To be asked to do that. And then no one said he was going to play. You know, he didn't say I'm going to play or nothing. He just, but I think he got off on, you know, all these people paying tribute to him, that he got up and he said, okay, I'm going to play. I'll play one song. Let's do rock and roll. I said, okay, man. And, you know, he's standing next to me, you know, and that's where they put the amp or whatever. And, you know, I'm like, okay, cool. He's going to play. I'm going to play with Jimmy Page, right? And the drummer started it, and all of a sudden Jimmy turned around and looked at that drummer and went, like he does. And I went, oh, fuck, I'm playing with Jimmy Page.
You know,
and that was, you know, outside of probably, you know, being in Tesla and making it and playing all those shows I did with Tesla, that was the biggest, that, you know.
Brian, we're the same age. For all of us kids in the early 70s that grew up worshiping Zeppelin. Yeah, I mean, who gets to play?
Yeah, I had Jimmy's posters on my wall. So that was a major highlight.
Brian from Nashville has a question. He says, looking forward to reading the book. Thank you, Brian. His question, with all the stories contained in this book and a lifetime of memories, what do you see as the next chapter in your life and musical legacy? Anything left on the to-do list?
Well, it's lots on the to-do list. You know, another Tesla record.
You told me offline, you told me last night you were working with Soul Motor, your side project.
Yeah. Me and Darren and Tommy McClendon have been working back together, the original Soul Motor band. And we're doing some new music, and that's great, you know, to be back with Tommy and me and Darren. That's a real creative thing I love doing. You know, another Tesla record would be great on the horizon. I got, you know, my company, J Street Entertainment, where I develop young bands. Breaking a couple of those bands would be, you know, something that I strive to do. Getting back to Italy, my house in Italy would be nice. That, you know, is another thing I strive to do. Tesla playing shows again, getting this COVID thing done and over so we can.
That's what everybody here, obviously, that's what everybody here wants.
You know, I'm the kind of guy that I'll be trying to do something until the day I die. Whatever.
One thing I learned working with you, your work ethic, you definitely have it's very much, to me, is sort of a mirror and reflection of the band. You have a very blue collar work ethic, and it's all about getting it done. And when it's done, it's about doing the next thing. So yeah. I experienced that firsthand. Hey, Brian, Chris in Albany wants to know, is the story of how you became a bassist in the book. He'd love to hear the origin story of just why you play bass.
Paul McCartney.
That's it.
Paul McCartney was the bass player. I wanted to be like Paul McCartney, so I played the bass. Although my mom got me a guitar first when I broke my leg when I was 12. And it was too hard. There was too many strings. And you know, I had it in my mind McCartney was the bass player, and I wanted to be a bass player. It's that simple.
Well, on the cover of the book, you're obviously pictured with a Hofner like Paul plays. Jeffrey in Charlotte wanted to know, in North Carolina, do you have a favorite bass guitar?
I got a couple. One is my original Hofner that I did the 5-man acoustic jam with in the early 90s. And I have a Thunderbird that I've had since the beginning that I used on, you know, the early Tesla recordings. Is pretty much a favorite. Those two are my probably favorite guitars.
Brian, you started telling me that years ago, it's when you were in therapy, and you were, again, this is all in the book, how you confronted a lot of things you were going with. It was a therapist who originally suggested you write a book, right? To sort of come to grips and confront a lot of things in your life. That's
he said as a way of being able to let go of things that you like internalize and keep locked in, which is why I probably have a lot of the problems I do, is because do keep a lot of things in, and as you get older and you get more vulnerable, you're able to let them out. He encouraged me. He said, you should think about it one day. It'll be very therapeutic for you. And that was it. I was in my 20s, so I was 28 years old. That was 30 years ago. So it took me 30 years to actually do it.
Hey, Brent, April in Los Angeles asks, what artists or musicians inspired you to get into music? You've mentioned McCartney. We talked Zeppelin. What are a couple of other bands back in the day that...
Queen were a big influence on me. UFO, Beatles, Zeppelin, Def Leppard. Def Leppard were a big influence on me.
Well, speaking of Def Leppard, your good friend Joe Elliott wrote a really amazing foreword for your book, Son of a Milkman. Let's talk about Def Leppard a little bit, because they really, they're characters in the book. I mean, they've played a big part, I think, in the rise of Tesla, and your band's relationships is still really tight. Phil Collins is a mutual friend of both of us. I wrote Phil's book with him as well. I think it's how we kind of got in touch with each other. Talk about Def Leppard and Joe Elliott in particular, because when Joe wrote the foreword, he was really, it's very personal, and he talks really at great length about your relationship, how much he cares about you, about your friendship. It goes back a long time.
Yeah. It's funny because, he says he doesn't remember it this way, and I say I remember it this way. But when we got to England and we first met Leppard, I being we, the guys in Tesla, we met Rick Allen, Phil Collins, and Steve Clark first. That time when we went and did those promotional shows in Europe, we played one in Amsterdam after London, after the marquee ones. And Peter Mensch, our manager, brought Def Leppard were finishing Hysteria in Wusselord there in Holland. And he brought Phil and Steve and Rick Allen to the gig. And we got to meet them, and then they got up and they played. We played Rock of Ages. We had 4 guitar players, and Rick Allen was beating on the drums with Troy, and it was a great night, right? So I'd never met Sav or Joe. So when we got to England to do the Hysteria tour of England, I didn't really see Joe. Maybe he was preoccupied with, being on tour for the first time in 5 years or whatever. Me being a kid, I thought, oh, this guy, he doesn't like us, And so I never really spoke to him much at all on that English tour. I hung out a lot with Steve Clark and Phil Collins. So when we got to America to start the American part of the tour, we were in Glen Falls rehearsing for the In the Round thing, right? We were there for about a week. And one night, me and Frank were in our room, because we shared rooms back then, carrying on, listening to music, whatever we were doing. And there's a knock on the door about 12:30 at night. I thought, oh shit, we must have been too loud or wake somebody up. And it was Joe. And he's like, hey guys. We're like, hey man, sorry. Were we being too loud? And he's like, no. Can I come in? We're like, yeah, come on in, man. Sure, why not? And he came in and we started playing acoustic guitars, because, Frank had an acoustic guitar and Joe was playing Wings songs. And I was like, oh, I love Wings. And we bonded over, these Paul McCartney and Wings songs. And we stayed up all night singing songs and telling stories and lies and bullshit and everything else that you do. And from that day on, me and him just kind of bonded. And that whole rest of the tour, I would always, we'd go out to movies or dinner, where I always, was with Joe, and Phil. Phil, there's a video somewhere of me, Joe, Phil, and Dan McClendon, Tommy McClendon's brother, in New Orleans doing this pantomime thing, The Hound Dog, which we'll have to find it someday and put it on the Tesla website. I think Joe's got it.
Well, Joe, he wrote a beautiful foreword. I want to read a couple of lines of what Joe Elliott wrote about you. He said, for Brian and me, it's more than music, it's kinship. I know he thinks of me like his big brother, and that's why we can poke fun at each other, and we do. I never had a little brother, so he's my pretend little brother, and he takes the brunt of everything I never got to do to a real one. Having said that, though, Brian is somebody I have total respect for because he's worked very hard for all he has and has contributed to so much. Why Tesla is still out there playing shows all these years later. I mean, Joe, I mean, again, he writes very lovingly about the friendship, and I think fans of Def Leppard will also love what's in this book. And speaking of the book, we want to thank everybody for being here. If you haven't gotten it yet, this is going to be, I think, the only way for now, at least, to get a signed copy of it, given the world, the state of the world right now. So if you haven't gotten a copy yet, you can do it right now, thanks to Premier Collectibles. We thank for having us. A couple of questions here, Brian. Sean from Chicago, which artist, oh wait, we did that, influences, Thad and Phoenix, what are you most proud of in your music career?
That I'm in a band that has been together 36 years. You know, that has survived and persevered and been through ups and downs, and, you know, gets up, wipes the dust off our pants and goes back at it. You know, I think that's a hell of an achievement.
Linda in Denver asks, is there a band you wish Tesla had the opportunity to tour with? You've toured with a lot of great bands as openers and as headliners. Who
There's one in particular.
Who?
They're called Aerosmith.
That would be it.
Steven, if you're out there, we'd love to go on tour with you any day. We've only played one show with them, and that was at Texas Jam. And that's the band, I think, that if you asked everyone in Tesla who we'd love to tour with, it would be Aerosmith.
What is it about Aerosmith that makes it that easy to answer?
Well, they're like Def Leppard. They were our heroes. And I think there's a lot of similarities between Aerosmith and Tesla. You know, and it's just that's our dream tour. It's always been, you know, outside. I mean, in the beginning it was Def Leppard. We wanted to go out with Def Leppard and Hysteria, and we did it. We made our dream come true, right? So we're still dreaming in our 50s about wanting to go on tour with Aerosmith.
Well, listen, it's out there now in the ether. So if anybody hears this, who knows whose ears it might fall upon. Peter in Jacksonville asks, what is your favorite song to play if you have one?
Song and Emotion.
You didn't even have to think about that.
No, it's my favorite Tesla song as well. And I didn't write it. You know, it's not a song I contributed to as far as writing, but I think it's kind of the epitome of a Tesla song all in one. Everything about the elements of Tesla. I think it's a great song, and I love playing that song.
Cool. Kyle in Jackson, Tennessee, is there a favorite car that you own or wish you had kept?
Well, I like my Mini. I have a Mini Countryman. And, you know, I don't know. I'm not really a car guy. I don't, you know, cars to me are a waste of money. I'm more into houses. I wish I would have kept my house on J Street.
Well, I was going to say, yeah, that's in the book as well. Your thing with collecting and flipping and doing what you do with houses. It's got a little book in itself. Hey, Leanne in New York wants to know, if you weren't a performer, a rock and roll performer, what other job do you think you might have ended up doing?
Don't know. It's the only job I ever had besides being in Tesla was at McDonald's.
Well, you were a good baseball player. I mean, who knows? Maybe that.
Yeah, but I wasn't pro material. I was too short. No, I don't know. You know, it's funny. I mean, you know, now looking at me today, I might have been in management or something. I don't know. But I developed these things as I started. You know, I wasn't always like the guy I am today. I don't know. It's a funny question. It scares me sometimes. I have nightmares about it. You know, what would happen if I didn't have Tesla?
Linda in Dallas wants to know if you have an earliest musical memory. Kind of gets to maybe a first concert or something that opened your eyes toward, you know, what you might end up doing.
Well, I talk about my, you know, probably one of my first musical memories is pulling out Revolver and playing Eleanor Rigby. What
about a live show? Was there a live show that you saw that?
Yeah, the first live show I ever saw was the Tubes, White Punks on Dope.
Wow,
I was like 12 years old. And I don't know if I talk about that in the book at all, but, you know, they had these naked chicks on stage, you know, tits were flying around and shit. And I was like, you know, I'm a pervert. You know, I was like, yeah, cool, man. Yeah, look at him. You know, shit, rock and roll. I want to do that. Yeah.
There was no show like
my
the
first touch. I didn't know that everyone didn't have naked chicks on stage. I thought all the bands had naked chicks. Shit.
Brian, Ian in Bloomingdale, Illinois asks, what are the biggest differences in touring now versus, say, back in the 80s?
Well, back in the 80s, we were partying. You know, we were doing, you know, drugs and drinking and all that stuff. And
that's in the book. There's a lot of this stuff in the book so readers know.
Yeah. And, you know, that's okay, though. You know, today, we're sober. You know, we're not partying. We're trying to take care of ourselves, you know, instead of staying up till 5, 6, 7 in the morning, drinking and, you know, doing whatever we were doing. You know, We're staying up 5, 6 in the morning now trying to get to sleep because we're all wound up. And, you know, before it was easy to fall asleep because I would drink until I fell asleep.
Right.
You know, back then.
You talk about the excess and things you had to go through, you know, back then.
Because I would just pass out. That's how I'd fall asleep. Now I sit there, my mind just races all night long, and I sit in my bunk and, you know, 7 o'clock in the morning, I'm still awake, and I go, shit, I got to get up at 2 o'clock and just, you know, get into my routine and do sound check. So I still to this day have a really hard time sleeping on tour.
You know, Brian, one of the things I think fans, I guess the hardcore fans are aware of, even the name Tesla today, it's weird that a band has a name that is now associated with another really popular product, right? Of course, they're a real company. But I don't think a lot of people realize that when you guys went in to cut your first record, the name of the band wasn't Tesla. There aren't, I don't think, many bands that are cutting their debut record that go through a name change through the recording process.
Yeah. We were called City Kid. And they're like, you know,
where does the name, how does City Kid, recording up in Bearsville, New York, up in the woods there, near Woodstock, how does City Kid become Tesla?
Well, when we first started out, me and Frank, we started out with this band Earthshaker, and that was like, we did covers of like UFO and AC/DC and Def Leppard and all that stuff. And then when that kind of fizzled out, we kind of started playing more contemporary pop music, which at the time was like Loverboy and stuff like that, right? And Billy Squier and, you know, whatever. So then we changed the name of the band to City Kid, which lent to that kind of sound, you know. And then we did a demo with Ronnie Montrose, and Ronnie Montrose said, hey, look, you got 2 different styles to your sound here. You got this kind of Loverboy pop sound, or you got this kind of Def Leppard sound. You got to pick one. Which way are you going to go? We said, we want to go Def Leppard. So that's when we made the decision to be a rock band, you know, straight up. Mm-hmm. And so from that point on, we were striving to get a record deal and whatever. And it took a couple years. And when we went to make the record, we had that first Mechanical Resonance record, but we were called City Kid. And, you know, the record company and our managers and everyone were like, this name's not going to work for this kind of music. So they said, look, we'll give you till the end of recording to come up with a new name. And, you know, we tried and we couldn't come up with nothing. One day, me and Jeff, you know, Chrissy Hine was there recording at the time. We were recording Mechanical Resonance, and we'd meet her, you know, at the coffee stand in the studio where they had the bagels and the coffee. And she was really, really cool woman. What a nice woman. And we were telling her, you know, we were trying to go. She said, well, come in my control room and I'll try to help you. So we spent about an hour in there with her, and she, you know, had some crazy fucking suggestions.
Like what? What did she want to call you guys?
I think one's name was Dog Balls or something, you know, just shit like that. You know, she's pretty like out there. And so what eventually happened was when we finished the album, recording the album, Michael Barbiero had a barbecue at his house in up, you know, New York there. And Cliff came as well.
Your manager.
And, yeah, our manager at the time. And he said, hey, look, I got this idea for a name for the band for you guys. And we said, okay, cool. What is it? And he goes, Tesla. And we're like, what the fuck's a Tesla? you know, and then he explained to us, you know, that Tesla was this inventor and he had done all these things and he was kind of like an outlaw underdog kind of guy. And that's what we related to. We went, okay, well, we can wrap our head around that, you know, and that's how that name came about.
Amazing. I mean, again, so few bands go through that.
I mean, had Cliff never said that to us, we would have never called the band Tesla.
That was it.
In a million years, not one of us would have thought of calling the band Tesla.
Guy Lane, by the way, in Indianapolis, Brian wants to know, how has this quarantine helped or hindered your creative process?
It's helped the creative process because I got to have something to do. So I kind of geared up more of my working with young bands, and, you know, I'm working on some new Soul Motor music right now. Mm-hmm. It's hindered it because it's actually caused me to be depressed at times as well. So it's kind of a double-edged sword. I'll be really glad when it goes away and we can get back to normal life as we know it or knew it. And, you know, I get back together with my brothers in Tesla and go play some concerts. And, you know, I'm sure that we'll find an album out of all this kind of, you know, this downtime we've had and what we've endured as humans and stuff. I think there'll probably be an album in there, you know.
You mentioned depression, and Ross Halfin, the famed rock and roll photographer, a good friend of yours, Def Leppard's. Ross wrote an afterword in the book, and you describe in the book, Brian, a day that you and Ross and Chris Cornell. Ross was photographing Chris Cornell around Los Angeles. He asked you if you wanted to go ride along with them, and you guys spent a day driving around LA, and you got this sort of, you know, day with Chris Cornell, and then shortly after that, you heard the news about his death, and you write about in the book about how his death, Chester from Linkin Park, Anthony Bourdain, people who you either knew or respected, that it appeared depression was leading to these really tragic suicides. And there's a moment in the book where that idea is kind of in your head as well, and you go through this struggle of coming out of that. What was that day like with Chris Cornell? What do you remember about you and Ross?
Well, I'd never met Chris before or since. That was just my only meeting with Chris Cornell. And obviously I love his voice, and, you know, I'm a big fan of him and Soundgarden. And so, you know, I'm driving him and Ross around, and we're just chatting, me and Chris, about whatever. And he started telling me about how he was having anxiety issues. And I told him, man, I've been having them since I was 15. And, you know, and we just kind of shared, you know, some of the things as far as anxiety that we were both going through. And I didn't know it, you know, it was that bad for him and he was going to end up taking his life. You know, I never really thought of suicide myself. I think what you're talking about is there was a point last year in Canada where I was going probably through the worst anxiety and depression I ever.
Right.
And it was consuming me. I couldn't, you know, I didn't want to get out of my bunk. I was having anxiety attacks on stage. And at that point, because up until then, I would always go, man, I don't understand, you know, how if someone's depressed, they would take their own life. It's hard for me to understand that, wrap my head around it. But at that point in Canada, I went, I think I understand now how someone could have those thoughts, because it was such a dark hole. And it's like, man, am I ever going to get out of this? You know? And that's what I came to terms with. But it was never like I contemplated killing myself. No, never.
Also, it was important for you to include in the book this idea to anybody reading it that there are always things you can do, that you never have to give up. And it was important to you to sort of, I think, reach out and remind people that no matter how you might be feeling, no matter how bad things might seem. And this was before the whole COVID thing. You wrote that before what was going on. But the message was the same. It was like, you've got to hang in. Here are some resources you can use. It really mattered to you to let people know.
Yeah, I found comfort in my friends. a couple of guys, Steve and Marco actually, who, work for Tesla. I hang out with them a lot, on tour when we're on days off and stuff. And, they kind of, I was clinging to them at that time because, they were kind of making me feel safe. And I don't think they even knew it, they just, everyone knew there was something not right with me.
Right.
So I think the main thing is don't isolate yourself. Don't get in situations where you're on your own and your mind goes crazy and you start thinking all these terrible things. I kind of was going, I'm going to stick around unless I'm in my bunk where there's, everyone else on the bus. I'm going to, hang out with Marco and Steve. So I'm not on my own tripping,
Brian, Tesla enjoys one of the most fervent, loyal fan bases. I mean, fans that have been with you from the beginning in many cases. What's your take on the fans? If you read social media, Tesla fans are the real deal. I mean, they're in it for the long haul. They're into the details. They're into to all of it. What's your relationship like with the fans? And what's your take on the fan base in general?
I think our fan base they're pretty like hardcore. Our fans are they're hardcore.
They're there for you. Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah, they're not on the fence. They love us. I think they're not like, oh yeah, Tesla's okay. The people that are Tesla fans are like, we love Tesla. Tesla's,
That's got to feel great though, right? I mean,
absolutely. I'd rather have it that way than just be, they're okay. I'd rather have them go, we think they're the greatest band in the world or the shittiest band. I'd rather be one side or the other, not in the middle. And
no, you're not a middle guy. Hey, everybody, just reminding you, if you want to get a signed copy of Brian and my new book, Son of a Milkman, My Crazy Life with Tesla, this is your chance to get a signed copy. There will not be a lot of other opportunities, given that we can't get together in person. So do check that out. Thanks for joining us. Some more questions here, Brian. Let's see. Duncan in Sarasota, Florida. Now, we've talked about Jimmy Page. Let's find another one. Which musician have you played with that you were most impressed with? So not including Jimmy Page, what's another musical experience that blew you away?
Frank Hannon.
Yeah.
Yeah, he amazes me every day.
That's cool.
I was impressed with him when he was 14 and I was 18, and I'm impressed with him today.
It's one of the great, that relationship is another great thread throughout your book. You're the first guy in Tesla to write a book. And so I know you were conscious of that and you wanted the guys to be with you on this. And you were, I thought, really cool about showing them certain things and getting their sign off on certain stories and things. And the band all seemed like they were into this. I know some of the guys might write their own book at some point, but they certainly seem to be supporting yours here. Let's see. Jack from Austin, Texas. Is there any one meeting in this book you cherish above all others? Got to be McCartney, right?
No, I think I cherish my friendship with Jimmy Page.
In terms of, but it says one
because
meeting.
McCartney is like I met him.
Well, you met him a couple of times. There's another story in the book about when you see him in Sacramento. I'm not going to.
Yeah. I mean, that's great. But I probably the thing I most cherish is how I developed a real friendship with Jimmy Page.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty cool. And my friendship with Joe Elliott's pretty, precious. And my brotherhood with the guys in Tesla is pretty precious. I mean, there's, it's hard, but I guess if you asked me today, I'd say, well, the fact that I'm friends with Jimmy Page and he's one of my heroes right next to McCartney is pretty cool.
Amazing. Jordan in Baton Rouge, Louisiana asks, what's been the highlight of your time with Tesla? I know there's a lot of them. Is there one moment that stands out that you think back on and think, okay, that's it right there?
That's tough because there's so many things.
Let me throw one at you though that's in the book. When you guys get back together and sell out Arco Arena in Sacramento, that was a big highlight. That was because we had broken up and it was kind of against odds that we'd get back together, and
and we did it. And when we got back together, everyone was, firing on all cylinders. Everyone was, committed and into what we were doing. And that period, was a pretty good highlight. That couple year period right there, from getting back together and making Into the Now. That was a real nice period of time for us.
You guys came up, I mean, the time when Tesla really catches fire, MTV is obviously a huge part of the landscape at that point, and it helped you guys out. I mean, you guys rode a nice part of that wave back then. What do you remember about how MTV affected Tesla?
No, it's huge. I mean, if you got on MTV, they had the power to sell millions of records, the way they promoted the bands. And I mean, if you were on there 4 times a day, 5 times a day,
right?
Some time. I mean, I think Signs was being played 3-4 times a day, and it sold like 3 million copies. And so it was a very powerful vehicle.
Yeah, even before you guys really came up, I remember Phil Collin telling me that when Def Leppard, in the earlier part of the 80s, they could always tell what cities had cable. This is like pre-cable in a lot of places. He said because everybody who knew what they looked like and knew the songs had MTV. But if a market didn't have cable yet, it was a totally different experience. And MTV really started to change things in just a really severe way. Chris in Savannah, Georgia, wanted to know, Brian, how often you still play, especially during the quarantine and stuff now. Do you play regularly?
Well, I played last night.
But up until then, do you practice? What's your playing regimen like?
That's a funny question, because like guys like Frank and Dave, they're all got a guitar in their hand, they're playing all day long, right? Me, I play the bass when it's time to play the bass, right? So I've never been precious about, I think I'm a great bass player, right? Because I'm not, but I can play the bass. There are guys that play the bass and there are bass players, right? I play the bass. But I mean, I don't really sit in a room and practice. If I play my bass, there's a reason behind it. Either I'm, playing in Tesla, or we're working on an album, or, I'm in the studio recording and I'm playing, creating. But I don't sit there and just go, okay, today I'm going to practice scales for 3 hours. That's not me. I don't have the patience for that.
Heather in Fresno wanted to know if you have any regrets looking back over the course of your career. Do you look at anything and think, okay, I would have done this part of it differently?
Regrets in my career or in my life?
Let's do both, and let's start with career.
I mean, I think we all have regrets. I don't think you're human if you don't have regrets.
Is there one regarding Tesla that you would change if you could?
No, because we learn from it. When we do things, we learn from it. And we're still striving and together, so it's not over. So I don't regret really anything. That's a tough one. I mean, I think I talked about one night how me and Jeff got into a fight.
Right.
Because I accused him of doing some drugs or something, and he didn't. And I was just drunk, and I thought he was. And I regret that, because me and him don't fight. You know what I mean? But that's all right. We were okay. We learned from it. We laugh about it today. But I might have regretted that. There were a couple times I might have regretted drinking too much, and getting sick. In my personal life, I regret maybe I could have been kinder to some people at certain points in time, when I was younger. It's easy when you're young and, you're at the top of your game, you can let your confidence kind of go a little bit rampant and turn into ego.
Well, you guys got into it,
or whatever. I mean, I'm guilty of it. I mean, I think we all are at some point in time. You know what I mean? I think the key though is recognizing it and trying to not do that anymore. You know what I mean? And I try to think a little bit more now before I speak or I have actions. But, you know, look, last night I was in a town meeting about a fence in my town of Auburn, and, you know, they had me on a city hall Zoom call, and I lost my composure. You
Really?
know? Yeah, finally I said, you fuckers are just on a power trip. You know, they're giving me all this shit about building a fence around my house in Auburn to keep my Jack Russells in, because it, you know, my house is a historic landmark, and you know, you have to submit it all. And I went, okay, I'm sorry I didn't submit it, you know, but you know, so I lost my cool, and I went, oh, I should have shut up, you know. I apologize.
You mentioned the Jack Russells. Dogs play a big part in the book. You're a dog lover. They're always part of your extended family. We get to meet your dogs in the book. There are some great photos and stories. Your dogs mean a lot to you, right?
Well, they're my children, yeah. I treat my dogs like children.
You
know,
do.
I remember one time Jeff Keith telling me, man, you spoil them dogs. I'm like, well, why have them if you're not going to spoil them? My dogs are my kids.
For everybody watching right now, so you know, Brian is actually signing books there. He's got a couple of stacks that you can't see.
Yeah, I got some books here. And
yeah, they're getting just. I would do this as a book. In our conversation, I forget it's a book signing as well. So just know your books are getting signed.
Looking at a book and sign it, and when you're asking me, you know, questions or people wanting answers, you know, but I am signing them. I got a whole big box and stack of them, and you know, here they are.
You mentioned
the cover. And
you mentioned
me and Chris back there.
There we are. That's the first time. It's the day we met.
Yeah, it's the day we met. Yeah, and hang on, let's see. What other cool pictures are here? There's me and what's kind of prior. There's the Soul Motor guys. There's Monique and my first wife Sandy, and there's me and Jeffrey.
Well, what's cool is you have a lot of cool pictures. Musicians.
There's my dogs. There's all my dogs.
Dogs are in there. You had a ton of great kind of personal images that we used, never before seen pictures. But Brian, a few minutes ago, you mentioned signs. You mentioned the acoustic thing. Let's talk about that a little bit, because that was a huge shift in the band. It was an amazing moment for the band when you guys went acoustic. People forget there was a time before bands went acoustic on a regular basis, and you guys kind of spearheaded that concept in a lot of ways. What made Tesla at that point go acoustic and then achieve, you know, their biggest album of all time?
Well, long story short, we had won an award, a California Bay Area Music Award for Best Rock Record with Great Radio Controversy. And they wanted us to perform at the ceremony. And I don't know if our gear was still in the truck or whatever, you know, our gear wasn't in town. So I said, well, we'll just play, you know, some acoustic guitars. And we worked up an acoustic version of Love Song. And this woman saw it in the crowd, and she worked with Boz Scaggs at his nightclub called Slim's in San Francisco. So she wrote a letter to our manager, Peter Minch, saying, you know, would your band Tesla entertain the idea of doing a 90-minute set acoustically and performing at, you know, Boz's club Slim's? So Peter Minch came and pitched the idea to us, and we said, no, man, we don't want to do that. That's not rock and roll, man. We're a rock and roll band, man. Amplifiers, Marshalls and stuff. And he kind of challenged us. He said, well, you probably couldn't, you know, pull it off, you know, take, you know, you probably, you know, basically saying like, you're not talented enough. And we're like, oh, well, fuck you. All right, we'll show you, you know, because that's how it worked with Tesla. You had to use, you know, like reverse child psychology on us. And so that's how that became. You know, we put together the show, which is that album.
But it was almost accidental. I mean, then you're back east and the guys go in. I don't think you were there, but they do a little thing on a live radio show, right? In Boston, I think.
Yeah. When we were on tour with Motley Crue, Jeff, Frank, and Tommy went to the radio station in Boston, and to promote the show, they took a couple of acoustics and they sang our version of Signs. Well, that station in Boston started playing that in rotation and started getting all these requests. And then they contacted, you know, our managers and Geffen Records and said, hey, look, this is what's going on in Boston. Do you have a version of this song recorded? And we had actually recorded 5, we played 5 acoustic shows because while we were out with Motley Crue, they only played like 3 days a week and we still had to play 5 days a week, you know, to pay the bills. So we put in some acoustic shows in the in between time. And we recorded one of them, which was Philadelphia. And we videoed it as well, which wound up being the album and the video. I think we spent like $30,000, which was just super cheap. And that wound up being our biggest selling album. So that's how it came about.
The first night that you met Jimmy Page, you learned that he was familiar and liked the acoustic set, right?
Yeah. Yeah. He said, you know, you're the first ones to do an all acoustic live album. So we didn't really spearhead the acoustic thing, but we were the first ones to do an acoustic live album.
Which,
you know,
did,
before
that
Rod
alone,
Stewart,
that alone
before
spearheaded
Nirvana.
a lot, because that opened the door, I think, for other artists. I mean, look, there had been acoustic sets before, but to package it like that was, you know, was a game changer.
Well, I mean, the big acoustic albums were, you know, the Rod Stewart, Eric Clapton, and Nirvana ones.
Right.
So, you know, the live ones. Ours was first. So there you go.
And from there, of course, that becomes part of the set. Now you always have to do.
Well, lately we've been through periods in time where we've embraced it and done a bit in the middle, and then a few years where we haven't. And I don't know where we're at now. I think last time we were doing it in the middle, and I think now we'll go back and not do it because we just finished when this COVID thing kicked off. We just did this live at Abbey Road thing.
I was just going to bring that up.
A nod to the 5-Man Acoustic Jam 30th anniversary.
Right.
So that was a big push on that. And then obviously we didn't get to do, and we were going to do the acoustic bit in the middle of the show again because.
Beatle freak that you are, what was it like to go do a live album at Abbey Road? I can't even imagine how
well, I guess the coolest point of it for me was sitting in that studio, playing my Hofner, singing We Can Work It Out, where Paul McCartney had played his Hofner, singing We Can Work It Out, you know, in 1965. That was pretty fucking cool. For me, that was, you know, the other guys in the band, I'm sure they have a different highlight or whatever, but that was a big highlight in my career.
Brian, here's one last question from Elaine in San Diego. It's a bit tricky, but I think it's an interesting question and something might strike you. How would you summarize your life in either a word, a quote, or a sentence? That's not easy, especially for you.
Fuck.
And I guess that can function as a verb, a noun, an adverb, however people want to take it, right? That's just...
Fuck. Like that. Fuck. Fuck, man. You weren't expecting that one, huh? Huh?
I'm just saying, Elaine, she triggered something. That's very funny. Right, before we wrap up here, you know, what does it, I want to know, my question to you is, what does it feel like now knowing that your life is in other people's hands? You know, you went out, you've shared a lot of really deeply personal things, great stories, great revelations, a lot of pain and things. What is it like for you now, Brian Wheat, musician, to be Brian Wheat, the author, and know that your life is out there now, you know, naked and unafraid for anybody to read?
You know, it's kind of like being naked. Kind of like being naked and having, you know, shrimp dick or something. I mean, it's like, here it is, man. You know what I mean? Ain't
Are
no
you
going
happy
back.
about it? Are you excited? Are you nervous? Like, what do you feel now,
Well, I
knowing
think
now that
I'm
book is out?
excited and I am nervous. I'm a little bit afraid, scared. You know, no one likes to be judged, but you know, I felt I needed to let this shit go. So, you know, part of me is like feels liberated and part of me feels like anxious.
Yeah.
Like, oh shit, I hope I don't piss anybody off.
Well, you'll find out, but
Right,
so
you know,
far-
you hope.
Look,
you
so
don't
far
look
the
up
response
to-
has been great. You know, before wrapping up, we want to thank everybody most sincerely for hanging out with us like this. You know, read the book, post your reviews and everything. We would love that. And Brian, I want to thank you personally for allowing me and trusting me to work on you with this.
Well, I want to thank you for getting me through it.
Well, it's teamwork for sure.
Yeah,
But-
no, it was a blast. Let's do another one.
You have at least one more book in you, so we'll definitely circle back then. I want to thank Premier Collectibles as well, both Brian and I. Thank Post Hill Press for setting this up again, and everybody here, for the fans especially. You're the ones that make this kind of stuff possible.
Yeah, thanks to the fans, really. I mean, without you guys, you know, I'd probably still be working at McDonald's. So, you know, I'd be going, would you like to supersize that? You know, we have a special on apple pies today.
You do that well. All right, man. Brian, thanks. Jimmy Dean in the background there. Thank you for helping us coordinate this. And Lauren, thank you down in Nashville for producing this with us. And everybody, again, thanks for hanging
There
out.
it is.
There's
Go
the
get
book,
it.
Son of a Milkman, My Crazy Life with Tesla, Brian
It's
Wheat.
funny. I think people find a lot of humor in it as well.
More than anything, there's a lot of great smiles and laughs. And hey, just watching you right now, I think they know what they're getting. So thanks everybody for joining us, and hopefully we'll do this again soon.
Hi.
I am sitting here with the one and only Jackie Chan, global superstar, and he is signing all of these books. Are your hands tired?
No, tired, but I'm happy.
All right.
Yeah,
I'm
really,
so
really
happy to hear that.
How do you feel?
Good. I'm excited. This is the first time I've done something like this before, a live signing.
Where do I want to go that I've never been? Oh, we're thinking about, not thinking, we're putting it in motion. I'm gonna go to Indonesia on my irresponsible tour this year. I'm excited about that, I've never been. And there's been a heavy demand for me there. So we're gonna go. We're gonna go to Indonesia and I'm gonna make people laugh in Indonesia. That's how I roll. How do you roll? I can't make this up. Wayne, you got your Indonesia pants? I decided it about a good 3 weeks ago. You'll see it on the schedule soon, so I suggest you go get your pants for Indonesia, because you're not going to wear them stupid pants. Where do you think Indonesia is? India. Yes, we out.
You can see that I'm signing it. This is not some machine scribbling my name. This is my actual human body scribbling my name. So, all right, there we go. First book, signed.
Biggest pet peeve? Men that talk to me with spinach in their teeth.
What can I do while at work to help lower my stress and improve my health?
One musician do you most admire?
I love you all, and we'll talk again soon. Take care.
Bye.
Much love. See you.
See you soon,
everybody.
Bye. Bye.
We'll see you around the world. Woo!
Have a great day.
Thank you, everyone here.
Bye, guys.
Say goodbye, Mary.
See you in the morning.
Goodbye, everybody. Thanks for coming. I'm gonna go get drunk.